Hi everyone, I'm Braxton,
I'm Dylan.
I'm Gabe.
I'm Pablo.
and this is investment banking market developments from the week of January 17th to January 23rd. In recent debt financing news, the US 30-year Treasury bond is sold at a 16-month low, totaling over just $1 billion. Numbers from the 3-year and 10-year are also down. This could signify many things. One being that foreign investors are losing trust in the US markets, and also signifying a global international recession with China struggling to produce economically. Other recent equity news is Avidro, an optometrist company that is focusing on helping clients not use visual aids such as contacts and glasses, filed its IPO on January 19th, 2019. It has received just over $85 million for this IPO, and its current market has high projections with 86% of Americans over the age of 40 needing some sort of vision correction currently. In recent investment banking news, France's second largest bank is now putting heavy cuts on their investment banking side. Usually as banks start to struggle, the first thing to go is their investment banking side as their depository claims need to take priority. Their shares are down 37% over the prior year with all of the turmoil in France and protesters protesting over taxes and other social problems. Also, the trading pool bonus has now been cut by 10%, causing unrest within the company as well.
All right, I'm Pablo, and I'll be speaking on developments in the mergers market. On Wednesday, January 23rd, we saw Colony Capital Inc. agreeing to acquire the Latin American operations of the Dubai-owned private equity firm Abraj Group for $10 million. Colony Capital's acquisition will undertake more than $500 million in assets. The Abraj Group in Latin America will rebrand itself as Colony Latam Partners and will be led by former Abraj employees. The transaction is expected to close by the end of this quarter. Another big merger development comes from Viacom's acquisition of Pluto TV for $340 million. Pluto TV is a free streaming device that is supported by advertisements. Viacom's move to buy Pluto TV is accompanied with questions on whether Viacom and CBS will remerge sometime later this year. Despite analyst predictions that they will, Viacom CEO Robert M. Bakish told Bloomberg on Wednesday that he absolutely does not need Viacom to merge with CBS to prosper, citing Viacom's growth since 2016 and strategy for the future. We chose to highlight Disney and 21st Century Fox this week as they're still closing out on their historic deal from Disney acquiring Fox for $71 billion. Part of that $71 billion deal requires Disney to divest some of Fox and Disney's assets, including Fox Sports Network. We're currently seeing Sinclair Broadcast Group and Apollo Global Management in a bidding war to see who would acquire Fox Sports Network. Fox Sports Network is expected to sell below the original asking price of $20 billion. In Brazil, the country's decision to rule on the Disney-Fox deal has been delayed until February. Originally, Brazil's tribunal was to decide on December 5th. Brazil has until March 18th to issue a decision on the deal. From this piece of news, we witnessed an overreaction in 21st Century Fox's share price. We see that once news came out of Brazil delaying the Disney-Fox decision, the share price took a small dip, however, it immediately recovered by the end of the day.
All right, overall conditions, everyone would assume that they are really good, which they are. There's low unemployment rates. People are spending money. We can see here that our focus that we wanted to show were two different statistics: the real GDP percent change from preceding quarter, and the real GDP and real value added by sector. So as you can see in 2018, quarter two in the last 4 years, it's had its biggest growth. Compared to the last quarter, it had about 3.4% just in the third quarter. And the other statistic, value added by sector, we wanted to show, which sector, as far as private goods, private services, and government were affected. We're seeing that real estate, rental, leasing, professional, scientific, and technical services were all leaders in contributing into increase of economic growth. Just in the last quarter, it grew about 4.2%. Uh, as far as regulatory, accounting, and tax development, we checked with GAAP, which is the generally accepted accounting principles. We also checked with the FASB, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Board. There weren't really any changes that affected securities. There was one regulation that affected episodes within a series within their accounting principles, but again, did not affect their securities. As far as the SEC, though, the Security Exchange Commission, they are currently working on two different regulations. The first one is based off of security-based swaps. This would affect the dealers and the participants to comply with different risks mitigation techniques with respect to portfolios of security-based swaps not submitted for clearing and central counterparty. And the other regulation that they're a court currently talking about, or rule as they would say, are whether to allow funds to acquire shares of other funds, meaning funds of funds arrangements. Dylan will now talk to us about global markets.
All right, so overall, the global markets are decent. This week it's taken a small downturn. So first we're going to talk about the foreign exchange market. So the US dollar weakens as global outlook improves. The dollar is pressured as US stocks underperform relative to those in Asia and Europe. As you can see in this graph to the right, this past week, initially on January 18th, it was at 89 and a quarter, jumped up to almost $90, but 89 and 70 cents, and then it's dropped back down to about where it started at the first of the week. And that downturn pretty much came from weak economic outlook and China trade concerns. So this graph and the WSJ dollar index measures the U.S. currency against a basket of 16 others, and that's, as we can see, it fell for the second consecutive day. Also, existing home sales, as we mentioned earlier, in the United States has had its worst month in more than 3 years. We've seen a huge increase in home sales, great economics, but we're starting to see a little bit of slowdown overall in the country. China's economy grew at its slowest pace in almost 3 decades, which is also causing the dollar to weaken. And also the International Monetary Fund warned that trade threatens to make slowing global economic growth even slower. So it's not only the dollar weakens against the international currency, but also international currencies weaken too, such as hurting the dollar more and more. So now we're going to talk about the commodity market. So U.S. oil prices decline on global slowdown fears. So the commodity market it's decent. Right now, investors await the new weekly update on the U.S. oil inventories in comparison with the international economic growth. So, overall, the oil prices have fallen again. This last Wednesday, they fell, and so investors are still trying to see what's going to happen with the global economy and see what that slowdown is going to ensue. Next, we're going to touch on banks and hedge fund markets. So the hedge fund market is doing really good right now. There are some risky assets that are moving together, which is causing more volatility overall in the hedge fund market. This is bringing worries over global growth, as I talked about before, and how overall the economy is kind of just slowing down right now at the beginning of the year. In December, we saw that also the economy was slowing down. So this is not only pushing stocks, but oil, treasury yields lower, once again this past Tuesday. So we can see that the International Monetary Fund cut its outlook and the world economic growth, while official data showed that Chinese economy expanded at its slowest pace again. So it's just trying to figure out what's going to happen with the U.S. economy in comparison with China and all the huge Asian and Europe markets. So overall, banks this week, there was one major bank in the UK. It's called Metro, and so that's it was a new upstart bank, and overall, and it's dropped 1/3 in its value because, as we can see in this graph to the right, so it was about 200 or 2,200, and then in literally 2 days, now it's at 1,400. So that was caused by major issues in its loan book. So overall, it's a new bank, had a lot of loan issues, and the most interesting thing that I found about it was that there's a Salt Lake City-based company. It's called Wasatch Advisors Incorporated, and that owns 3%. So this bank is owned by a lot of U.S. investors, and so people are getting a little bit scared. So overall, today or this last week was pretty good. We did see a slowdown in recent debt and financing news. Things were just, it was a monthly low for everything. Also, major mergers, market developments. We had Colonial Capital, Viacom that we talked about, also with Disney and 21st Century Fox, and how that's affecting not only the Brazil Disney but others. Economic conditions, we touched on that, and we saw that GDP increased by 3.4% in the third quarter, but it is starting to come back down a little bit. And overall, the global markets are doing good. It's just been a slow week. Nothing crazy's happened. There hasn't been a big recession, but just things are a little bit slow. So thank you so much for tuning into week 2, and we'll see you later.